But right now, I'll send it to our national team of Abby Stonehocker and Scott Ayers.
In the Senate, we are looking at the race in Texas between Republican Ted Cruz and Democrat Beto O'Rourke. In Arizona, we will be following the tightly contested Senate race of Democrat Kyrsten Sinema and Republican Martha McSally. And the final Senate race we are covering is in Missouri as Democrat Claire McCaskill fights for her political life against Republican Josh Hawley.
We are also looking at races in the House, the 10th Congressional District in California. The fight is on between Democrat Josh Harder and Republican Jeff Denham. Then we'll take a look at the 6th Congressional District in Colorado between Democrat Jason Crow and Republican Mike Kaufman. The final race we'll look at is not a congressional race, but a governor race. Democrat Andrew Gillum and Republican Ron DeSantis will fight for the governor's seat of Florida.
After only a 36.7% voter turnout in 2014, reports suggest that this midterm could reach its highest turnout, around 47% since 1970. The question now is, how educated are people about the candidates they are voting for?
The Obamacare sign-up deadline gets...
The Republican Party has been trying to replace Obamacare since Trump took office. So far, they haven't succeeded, but many are saying the midterms could seal the deal.
Trump-Pence administration will uphold the Hyde Amendment. We will end late-term abortions nationwide.
Brett Kavanaugh's recent confirmation as a Supreme Court justice has abortion supporters worried about what the court's new conservative majority means for them. There's talk of overturning Roe v. Wade, and if that happens, voters in Alabama, West Virginia, and Oregon will decide on a legislation with potential to be highly restrictive on abortion rights.
Thousands of migrants from Central America trying to make their way through Mexico and head toward the U.S.
Republicans are saying before we legalize immigrants, our #1 priority should be national security by protecting our borders. Democratic nominees disagree, and many have talked of clear paths to citizenship and a plan to abolish ICE. Republicans currently control both chambers of Congress, but Democrats are hoping to take back the House. The opinions of candidates on hot-button issues like these could make all the difference. Reporting for Star City News, I'm Bailey Vertiska.
These 6 states will be the main focal point for our national election coverage.
With coverage in 3 Senate races in the states of Arizona, Texas, and Missouri that have been seen as some of the closest and most interesting.
On top of that, we have 2 House races in Colorado and California, and we have coverage of a governor race in Florida.
We start our national journey in the state of California as a congressional race is in the 10th Congressional District, could have a big impact on the majority of the House.
That's right, Democratic candidate Josh Harder is up against Republican Jeff Denham in a district that has a slightly favored Republicans. Now let's travel over to the Rocky Mountain state of Colorado.
Republican Mike Kaufman is looking to keep his seat in the House of Representatives as Democrat and former Army Ranger Jason Crow is his challenger. This is another race that will have a massive impact at who controls Congress in January.
Now let's take a look at one of the most unpredictable swing states in the nation. The governor's race in Florida is one to keep an eye on. Democratic candidate Andrew Gillum is up against Republican candidate Ron DeSantis.
The state of Missouri is continuing on with an intriguing Senate race. Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill is doing all she can to keep her spot as the rising Republican Josh Hawley is coming after her seat. In another tight Senate race, Claire McCaskill and Josh Hawley are in a battle as neither have held more than a 4-point lead in this election cycle. McCaskill has held her position since 2007. She nearly lost in 2012 to Todd Atkins before he made controversial comments about rape. Now, the newcomer for the GOP Attorney General, Josh Hawley, is looking to be the next senator in a state that is swinging in the favor of the Republicans for the last decade. Hawley is seen as a foot soldier for President Donald Trump and is supporting his actions. Meanwhile, McCaskill is holding on for dear life and has not said much about Trump, which has turned off some Democratic voters. She continues to say she's a moderate, but typically votes for the Democratic Party. And after interesting comments from McCaskill saying she isn't one of those crazy Democrats, Hawley's time might be upon the state of Missouri as McCaskill's hourglass is running out.
But let's head on over to see what's happening in Colorado.
Yeah, and in this race, it is Democrat Jason Crow against the incumbent Mike Kaufman with 75.6% of the precincts in. And it is the young Jason Crow looking to take out Mike Kaufman. Kaufman is in this district that is heavily in favor of the Democratic Party that favored Hillary Clinton in 2016, Barack Obama in 2012, but Mike Kaufman had been able to hold on to his seat in Congress and in this district. A large part of that is due to the fact that he was able to have these minority outreach programs. He's actually bilingual in Spanish and has actually had an outreach to Ethiopians and has looked to have a direct flight from Colorado to Ethiopia.
Yeah, that will be really interesting. Another thing to look for in this race is, just that age difference, because Jason Crow is pretty young and coming into politics, whereas Mike Kaufman is, pretty skilled in what he's doing.
Right, and so you mentioned that. You mentioned kind of the diversity in age, and one of the tougher things that Kaufman is enduring is, is he's getting attacked for these endorsements with the NRA. He's receiving quite a bit of money in a state that has had mass shootings, both at Columbine and Arapahoe. So these are some storylines to keep in touch with as we start heading to break. As we continue to follow these national races, the drama is sure to fall as Democrats and Republicans fight for the House and the Senate.
We have much more to come here on Star City News. Thanks, Aaron. There are many races in the U.S. that are shaping up to be closely contested.
That's right. Let's take a closer look at these national races that are making headlines around the country. And first, we will look at the Florida governor race, Andrew Gillum versus Ron DeSantis, with 96% of those precincts in, and DeSantis, the Republican, with the slight lead over Gillum.
I'm not surprised by this because Gillum did make an unusual move during his campaign of proposing a corporate tax increase, which was going to be up from 5.5% to 7.75%. And a lot of people, were not happy about this.
And, with the taxes implications that Gillum had provided, some of these bigger corporate industries that might not agree with DeSantis decide to side with him in this race in order to avoid those taxes up to 40%. But it wasn't all clear skies for DeSantis based on some of the comments he made earlier in this race against Gillum.
Yeah, Gillum did accuse DeSantis of being a racist, but he didn't say it that way. He said it more, I'm not accusing Mr. DeSantis of being a racist, but the racists are accusing him of being a racist. So that was super interesting. Let's talk about the Arizona race between McSally and Sinema. The precincts are at 53%, with Sinema at 49.1% and McSally at 48.6%. Now, a lot of people have been looking at pollings for this race, and a lot of it has been skewed, placing one or the other over for a victory.
That's right, and at one point it said McSally might have a 7-point lead, Sinema with an 8-point lead, just going back and forth. And another interesting thing in this campaign, it's also been toxic, and Martha McSally at one point saying, accusing Sinema of treason because she had made comments about back in 2003 that it was okay if Americans went and left for the Taliban. And so, she said that, Sinema said that it was a smear campaign. These two have been going back and forth, and this is all after Jeff Flake retired as the senator.
Yeah, exactly. These two really don't get along, and you've seen that in a lot of their debates.
And it's what's interesting to see. This is a state that has been mainly Republican for quite some time. However, the suburban areas are starting to vote more Democrat. There's been a higher rate in Hispanic votes, and that has had that has been in the Democratic favor.
Exactly, and a lot of the votes in Arizona have switched to, the voters have switched to being independent. And when these candidates have to campaign, they really have to switch up how they're campaigning and go more moderate to accommodate for those voters.
And one final thing to really keep in mind, Democratic candidate Kyrsten Sinema, she's actually might be in favor of some extra voting as third-party candidate Angela Green dropped out of the race last week. Green was polling at around 6%, but that 6% can have a massive impact on who wins a tight race like this one. So something to keep in mind as Sinema currently has that small polling lead right now over McSally.
Exactly. We'll just have to wait and see, and more to come.
All right, thanks a lot, Grace. And we now are receiving word from NBC News that the GOP has officially held the Senate for this year, and the Democrats have won the House of Representatives. We'll now send it upstairs to Scott Ayers and Abby Stonehocker for more.
Well, Zach, I'm here once again with you now, Professor Lloyd Ambrosius. And Lloyd, we look at the House of Representatives, and it's starting to close in that it might go in favor of the Democratic Party. And historically speaking, back in 2012, it flipped in favor of the Republicans. It was also when Obama was reelected. And so now we see Trump's second term slowly approaching. Is this something, historically speaking, that we have seen time and time again?
Over the centuries, actually, after the creation of the American Constitution and the new American government, typically in the midterm after a president first wins office, the other party has gained votes. And so, after Donald Trump won in 2016, if you looked at the historic pattern, you would expect that the Democrats would do much better in this election. There are a few exceptions to that. One major exception was in 1998. Bill Clinton was facing impeachment, and the American people did not favor what the Republicans in Congress were doing. And so in the 1998 congressional elections, the Democrats actually increased the number of seats, basically voting against impeachment and making it very difficult. The Republicans went on to impeach Clinton, but the Senate did not remove him from office. That was one of the rare exceptions. This time, it's a really different situation, however, given the gerrymandering that was done after the 2010 census. Historically, over previous decades, the Democrats would have needed about 2% more votes totally nationwide in order to win control of the House of Representatives. Given the gerrymandering, which favored Republicans after 2010, Democrats now need to gain somewhere between 10 and 11% nationwide in order to be able to win a majority in the House of Representatives. And so the gerrymandering effect makes this a rather different kind of election, midterm election, compared to most.
Right, and that different kind of beast. 1998, we see Clinton and Donald Trump in 2018. Well, as we get near the end of the show, we still have just a bit more here on Star City News.